statistics, it was a difficult process and we were not able to get many of the data. I was interested in the amount of these fees in Slovakia. It's over 10% of net minimum wages, which is 427 euros 11 cents. And why is it 10%? I would like to ask you to show the graph.
No one talks. We lost the transmission.
Galina, could you please describe a little bit of a history of the utility those charges,
Môžete nám
please?
priblížiť históriu komunálnych poplatkov?
Меня слышно? Государство сегодня является политической
Government is
надстройкой, которая
government
поставляет
is
себе обществу, народу. Государство — это государь.
the government cannot
Это
do
человек с
its economic
ручным
activity
аппаратом.
because there is no money in the
Государство само не
budget,
может вести
and
хозяйственную деятельность,
for
потому что своих денег у него
making
просто
any
нет. То
expenditures,
есть,
the
чтобы
country
наполнить
should have
казну,
budget, should have taxes.
для этого
Why the
необходимо
historical
налоги, которые взимаются
record of the utility
Налоги
payments
это
begins
базовые
with the issue of the
материальные
state
расходы
and
правительства.
taxes,
Почему
because
сегодня
utilities are
исходя
provided by the
частных коммунальных
state,
платежах мы
and
начинаем
the
именно
state
с
always
вопросов
increases the cost of
государства и народа,
the
да
price
потому
of
что
these utility
коммунальные
services.
услуги нам
Olga,
предоставляет
would you like
капиталь
to add anything?
и постоянно повышает их стоимость именно за счет налогов, прямых или косвенных. Оля, хочешь что-то добавить?
In the country of Lagash, there was no regular taxation in the beginning, but when they entered the period of aggressive wars, they lost their freedoms. The taxation became not just permanent, but it was kind of robbery. Government officials started taxing people. They just rushed into the houses of people and seized their property. And taxation even covered the temples. And the death of a taxpayer wasn't an issue for tax charges. The government required from the relatives of a deceased person to give them either grains or other property from their house. Yulia, can you continue, please?
Юлечка, продолжи, пожалуйста.
So there were some really strange taxes, such as the tax for urine, and it wasn't fair to pay with this money. Then an emperor showed the money to Vespasian, showed to his son, does the money smell? No, it doesn't. So with this thing, Vespasian wanted to say that it doesn't really matter where money comes from, but at the same time, there's no point in discussing with the public where money comes from. Does that sound familiar? Ola. Yes, in Talmud, we find two institutions of theft through taxes of people. So this is the local and central authorities, and one of the largest examples of that is that can be found in the history of the ancient Rome. By the way, today in the 25th century, we live by the Roman law, the main slogan of which is divide and conquer. And 21 type of taxes existed in previous times, including land tax, income tax, army tax, recruiter's tax, and when you pay this tax, you could have escaped the army. Also, a tax for selling goods. The usual rate was 10 to 12%. The rate for issuing state-owned decrees. Just like now, also great examples of direct and indirect taxes we see in the Bible. For example, regarding direct taxes, the second book of Kingdoms, second chapter, 11th verse. If my father burdened you with a heavy burden, then I will make your burden heavier. And the indirect tax is the 10%. And we see that the taxes in the ancient times were regarded as something sacred, so that none could doubt them. And who did not have to pay taxes? Priests. Allah, please continue. So water, drainage, utilities, and so on, all the taxes that you pay for that have been known since ancient times. So basically, taxes have been paid from utilities, and you can say that today a lot is being said about taxes because it is through taxes that utilities rise up to 80%. And the common practice of counting tax utilities begins in ancient Rome. Since Roman Emperor August Octavian. So there were some authorities that were monitoring how taxes were paid, and every city had a registry which had all the information about the landowner. Census was being conducted, and at a certain day, every citizen had to file a declaration, and all this exists until now, and the modern principles of utilities still remain. So they still take into consideration the square footage, they take into consideration the type of housing, and so on. Юля? So in the Bible, we see that census was made for better counting the taxpayers, and there was a case when everyone went to participate in census. But let's get back to utilities, to their history. Artificial taxes were most affected by additional tax that was taken by the gates from all the goods brought in and outside. A band was doing that. In other words, a recruited army of the feudal. And when territories were being, when there were more territories being taken, this is when these bands, the so-called bands, appeared. So basically, people were robbed. As they say, a gang is a gang. And this is similar today to many different areas. Olem, I give the floor, please continue.
Yes, today we've heard many times, we will hear many times the examples how the governments invent taxes. In ancient times, government officials, in order to increase taxes, they invented 2 months in a year. They had 14 months during a year instead of 12, and for these 2 extra months, they charged full taxes. By the way, in the Bible, in the Tanakh, the collectors of taxes, these government officials, were considered to be robbers by people. People didn't like them, and they couldn't be judges. They couldn't give testimonies in courts, and even their sacrifices were rejected. So, but within after some while, they no longer called the robbers, and those who don't pay taxes already are called criminals because they steal king's property. Galia, please continue. But it's not the case all the time. In Tripoli culture, there was no kings. There were no kings. All issues were resolved together by people. And let's recall the period of flourishing of Egypt, ancient Egypt. It was the period of truly free people. For responsible positions, competent and knowledgeable people were appointed, and they were spiritually developed, and sciences and studies were encouraged, and the ability to hold oneself in hands, and economy was serving the needs of people, and the irrigational system in Egypt was developing. Egypt was totally provided with the potable water, and there was equality between men and women. And nowadays, all constitutions of all the countries of the world provide us with the rights to live with free health care, to have good jobs, to have good salaries. All the resources seem to belong to people, and the people is the only source of power. Nowadays, by limiting the capitals of up to $10 million per family, we can resolve numerous issues. There won't be any taxes for people. Companies will pay taxes, but at normal, reasonable rates. And utilities, payments of loans will not exceed 10% of our salaries or pension fees. We will work 4 days a week, 4 hours a day, and we will have average or high salaries. What can I say also is that we can eliminate, by setting equal prices all over the world, we can eliminate inefficient and unequal distribution of resources. And nobody will be in need of any normal everyday resources, and bribery and corruption will be eliminated. There will be no wars and international conflicts, and all people will live with a creative approach. They will do everything for people, for God. That's a historical record from our side. Thank you.
Olia and Yulia, thank you very much for this interesting story of our history, describing the beginning of the utility bills, charges, and taxes. It is great to see that the society was created for good of people when we talk about tribal culture or ancient Egypt during the reign of Imhotep. And we will continue to talk about positive examples. Let's have a look at the part of the video program called The Precedents with Igor Mika.
So all amounts beyond this capital limit are directed towards development, towards the needs of society. Of course, Meaning this is correct redistribution of money, of funds. What will it do? This allows removing unnecessary foolish competition. This again allows all of humanity to become a lot richer, a whole lot richer. This allows creating free healthcare, the same for everyone. And this was also voiced at the conferences. It's not just an idea, it's a necessity. Free, high-quality healthcare of the same level throughout the world. Any person should be socially protected, anyone. But the one who wants to be richer, he can go and work, earn extra money and live better. Yet the limit is 10 million. It's more than enough. But again, not just free healthcare, there should be free education and there should be reasonable prices. For example, how much, let's say, housing fees, utility costs and everything else amount to nowadays? And what if, God forbid, there is also a housing loan? Sometimes in some countries taxes reach 80 or even 90% of the value of earnings. Well, these are taxes, but I mean bills, utility bills. For example, a person pays a loan, pays public utilities, has an average salary, so almost the greater part of the salary is gone anyway. And I agree, totally agree, that all these expenses shouldn't exceed 10% of one's salary. This is easy to do. Economically, it all fits. Guys, there is nothing simpler than economics. Micro is a problem, while macro is simple. Also regarding macroeconomics, the idea of creating such a unified planned economy of a united and constructive society was voiced. And that's right, absolutely right. There is no overproduction, there will be no shortages. Why? If somewhere, let's say, there is a lack of something, it immediately becomes more expensive. And again, those very price increases, inflations and everything else, these are the scourge of our time. It's a tool of consumer-based order, which drives a person into a pit of debt. Well, let's say just as slavery began 6,000 years ago, and so to this day it has only been getting more refined. And this is true, absolutely. It's just the same various facets, right? Of course, only nowadays a person is much more deprived of rights. He's totally dependent. Why? No matter how much money a person has earned, in 10 or 20 years, his capital will decrease significantly, even if they put it to banks to earn interest. But inflation is much higher and faster than this interest rate. So a person becomes poor even without spending anything. And this shouldn't happen a priori. If, for example, for people to understand, there is a kilo of meat of a certain category or a loaf of bread. This soap mix costs, let's say, a strictly fixed price, and it should cost exactly the same all over the world. It should cost that much today, in 20, in 100, and even 200 years. It's not difficult. Well, has gold become lighter or what? Has oil become better or thicker? Why is inflation taking place? Because there is greed, because there are trade boosters and the like. Meaning it's beneficial for a state when its currency becomes cheaper. This intensifies the flow of funds. Well, the state sort of becomes richer while people become poorer. And again, it's beneficial for a state. How can that be? What benefits a state doesn't benefit the citizens of this state. There is a question then. What is a state? A state is who? Simple question. Well, I'm not talking about what should be ideally, but unfortunately, in our society, a state means territories, some facilities, some subsoil resources. Wait, so it's not something living. The state, it's something amorphous. But in my understanding, a state means people who exist within a certain agreement, within a certain territory. They do business here, they live here, they feel good here, their ancestors live here, or they moved here, doesn't matter, but they live, they are citizens of the state, and that's what the state is. And it's them who should benefit. After all, in my opinion, a poor state, a proper state, is when Year after year, it becomes easier and better for people to live. When it becomes simpler, when it becomes freer for them, then this is right. While what do we observe? What tendency do we have now, at least over the last couple of 100 years? Does it happen this way? Let's take the last 20 or 30 years. People's life has been improving, right? No. Therefore, what is a state? You know, a state is our kings that rule. So the ruling elite, and I'll put it simply, today it is believed that a state is those who possess power. And who possesses power in our case? Let's take the constitution of any country and read. Power is people. While in actual fact, all these are the tools of manipulation, substitutions that have taken place during all this time. They have led to the fact that before, pardon me, people talked in a low voice in their kitchen about these problems. It would be great if there were such a community, it would be nice if we lived like this. But now they are already speaking, the candidate for the presidency of the United States of America already declares to the whole world about the transition of economy and world order from the rails of consumer-based format to a creative and constructive format. Why? And it is openly said that if we don't do this, nothing good awaits humanity. Right? Every person understands and actually feels where this consumer-based format leads to and how much deceit, how much problems.
It's really wonderful. It's so fulfilling to see that we can talk about these topics, how we wish to live openly at these online conferences and not discussing these matters only by the kitchen. Let's ask our friends from other countries. We are gonna ask our friends from different countries. I would like to ask Victor if the topic of utility bills charges are important for people.
Utility payments, are they important for the people? Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Can you hear us? Of course, it's very important because utility payments is the top subject. It's a top number one topic, not for just one person, but for all people. We know that according to the statistics, the share of the utility payments comprises 16 to 25%, and this is not the limit which was voiced. A simple example. My parents are pensioners, and their joint pension combined only covers the utility payments, but what is remaining, I would like to understand why so little remains, because they need some comfortable conditions for their living. And of course, we should take care of this. So I've decided to clarify why is this happening and to trace what are utility payments, what is the structure of these bills, and why is such inequality, why is such a difference in pricing policy. For example, first of all, utility payment, a bill is paid for a certain service, for a certain of supplies of utility service. A utility company provides us with this service, and it's also an intermediary in this whole chain. And this operating company purchases the utility resource from a generation company. So already we see several factors. We pay not for the whole object of utility like gas, electricity, but we pay for the service. And it turns out that in this chain there are many mediators, intermediaries, and if just we see every intermediary, every company, or either it's a resource generation of resources or supply of resources, they are in certain ownership structure. There is a legal entity for individuals, but these are mostly private structures. And we know that any business structure follows two major rules. Rule number one is profit, and rule number two is diversification of risks. So basically, in order to gain profits, you need to secure yourselves from risks. And here we can understand why such a pricing disbalance takes place, why prices are rising. because there is such a factor. And for example, if we look at the example of water supply, water is extracted from drilling channels from the underground places, and then it goes to the resource company, it goes to certain tubes, a tubing system, it is purified, and then it is supplied to a managing company. And on this border, the resource, this communal resource, already turns into a service. And now we already have this difference in the price and profit components. So we have to conclude, if every company sticks to certain creative and constructive rules, if every company takes care of people, it will be a buffer, but not a such a turbulent creator of factors which will increase prices and cause price disbalances. And also another point which I'd like to mention, that all the national resources belong to people, to the state, as Igor Mikhailovich has mentioned in the program. And I also like to understand, how is it reflected on the prices? Why certain costs should be included into prices and not, and how company can provide bonuses. So basically these national resources belong to, we have to benefit from them. And I think that Bogdan, our expert, will contribute to our discussion. Hello, Victor. Thank you very much for giving me the floor. To continue on the topic, I will include that to the resources, natural resources, we also include waters, underground water and above ground waters like rivers, lakes, etc. The water belongs to people, and then it is used for utility services. So people actually have total rights for this natural resource. But utility services also include certain economics and certain reasonable costs. For example, water is extracted, then it is purified to the potable level, and then it is transported to houses. And this process of purification and transportation is actually a component of the utility service. Today, unfortunately, the process of providing of such services is not transparent enough. And this example which Victor has given, we can see that there is a disbalance between the water supply companies and consumers. So within the framework of a constructive society, it's very important to limit capitals. This will allow us to provide services, utility services, only from the company which are state-owned. They will be non-commercial, they will be paying no taxes, and this will contribute to decrease of the prices on utility services, and utility services will not exceed 10% of the salary of people. In constructive and creative society, there will be no shifting of responsibility from people to the government. People will be active in managing the utility sector. And it's very important also to reject, to eliminate consumerism and to direct all the extra funds, for example, to develop infrastructure, to the technologies of extraction and purification of water. In the constructive and creative society, there will be no more deaths because there will be no sewage system, terrible sewage system. Any person in any country can just open water supply channel in his apartment and drink pure potable water. Thank you very much. Good afternoon to everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Bogdan, for the interesting information. I live in Germany, and I always thought that utility bills are not my problem, but now I decided to understand deeper what are utility services and what kind of services we should have in the constructive and creative society. Germany is one of the most developed countries of the world. Many people want to live in our country. They get information from mass media, but this information is not quite applicable to reality. And how do people live in Germany in actual fact? I'd like to talk about the housing, Germany, affordable housing. And I need to say that the country of Germany has protected its poor citizens. But why such poor category of people has actually a reason. These are people who cannot afford paying for utility services because the bills are too high. In average, these are 20 to 45% of people's salary. And who can afford paying this? Only those people who have salaries over 2.5 thousand euro per month. What do we have here? In order to create a constructive and creative society, we really need to limit capital accumulation, because in such a society, people will pay for their apartments only 10% of their salaries. No, I would like to live in such a society. And I'd like to mention about water. The quality of water in Germany is controlled by the state. And this is right, this is correct, because people's health is our future. And as Igor Mikhailovich Danilov is saying, the most valuable is human life, and this is really so. But people who live in Germany, they pay for water more than in any country, other countries of the world. Germans pay 4 times more for the water than in America, 2 times more than in Australia. 1 cubic meter of cold water costs 1.7 euro, and 87 cents is the sewage water. Why are prices increasing all the time from year to year? The water is not changing, but that's the problem. In the constructive and creative society, there won't be price increase. We have hot water, cold water, electricity, gas. In the construction and creative society, all prices will be the same, and people will be happy to live in such a society. Joy and happiness will be inside them. I'd like also to say that now humanity has a real chance to choose the vector of spiritual and moral society. And everyone should ask himself a question: what kind of a society I'd like to live in? This is very important. I choose the vector of spiritual and moral society. I invite all people, and together with the participants of the AllatRa International Empowerment Movement, I joined the positive initiative, and I kindly invite everyone to actively participate in the international conference, which will take place on 9th of May 2020. And now I give the floor to Italy. Ina, please tell us how people in Italy live now. Thank you very much. I will share my experience of living in Italy. For most people, the sunny country of Italy is a place where people are happy and have no problems. And I belonged to such people 4 years ago. But what I was surprised about is that the bills on electricity, these bills are coming to the postal address, and this is a long bill with several pages. And it is an explanation of these amounts. 1 kilowatt of electricity is totally calculated, and also to this amount they include the costs of all the network services, the rental fees for the meters, and also the services of intermediaries, and as well they pay VAT. Also, for the electricity supply, there is an obligatory service of television, and it costs me 9 euro per month. Pricing per 1 cubic meter of gas doesn't differ from the component on electricity payments. If we look deeper into this, if you look into any bill, 50% is what I pay for the actual resource, but other 50% is other costs which are due to the services. And additional supplementary costs increase. That's why taxes increase. As a result, the end consumer pays for all this fantasy of the market economy. We all understand that our time and our work costs. When I pay for the service itself, this is clear, but I have a question. Why should I pay for other services? I'm tired of living in constant fear whether I can afford paying my bills, whether I will have time to pay to get salary. And what if I lose my job? I'm always facing this choice, and this choice is not always conscious. My dream is to live in the society where every person will work in the sphere where he or she can realize himself or herself without any conditions of prestigiousness, about levels of salary. Nobody will rob each other, nobody will deceive other people. Every service or every good should be directly used and serve people directly and have equal price all over the world. The main goal for us is to understand that we shouldn't shift responsibility to anyone else. We have to respect our own labor and other people's labor. Main value is a human and his or her life. Now I give the floor to Greece. Thank you very much, Inna. In Greece, it's quite a similar situation. Let's look how a government system is working, aimed at supporting no ordinary citizen. And all people are in constant fear and stress, suppressed mood, because they're hurried to solve various problems. Taxes are growing, jobs are decreasing over the last years, and there are many people unemployed in Greece. Salaries over this year has decreased by 40%. The cost of life by all indicators has increased significantly. And there is such a situation when a person, regardless of his or her professional skills, tries to stick to any job with any salary, which is quite small sometimes. And regardless of the income, people have to pay for utilities, which is about 75% of the salary. 1/3 of the bills for electricity are not paid in the country or paid with a delay. And also for this delay, you have to pay penalty and other reasonable costs, because government actually shifted responsibility to some private companies who can calculate the bills. If the resources will be distributed correctly, all the utility payments and all the loan payments for the housing should not exceed 10% of the salary. Now, speaking about loans, half of the loans in Greece are not repaid. There used to be a law which forbade banks to give loans, but now it was abolished under the pressure of the European Union. Now there is an electronic system of options, and people are not asked, but on a legal basis, their property is being possessed by the government structures. As a result, banks become owners of houses and apartments whom nobody buys. People will come in the streets because apartments and houses are standing empty, but banking balances are high. This is the reality which we have today. It's not just a consumer society, it's a totally hopeless society unless we change it completely. All people have the right to participate in the ruling of country, but mostly it's the right to have a dignity, good life. Everybody wants to be free. We need to abolish all the loans. This will revitalize economy and society. This relates to the government debts and to the private debts. The task of the constructive and creative society is to limit capitalization, to equally distribute all the resources. Our common task is to build a spiritual and moral, open society which will be equal. Thank you very much, my friends. I'll give the floor to Olga for the survey of Belgian situation. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. I've conducted certain exercise. It's a very simple calculation, math calculation. I calculated all the taxes. I added VAT and all the costs for the necessary services and goods. And also I added the costs on electricity bills, water bills, etc., etc. And I didn't calculate any other communal services. As a result, I got the amount of 1,615 euro. And that I failed to calculate everything. I was very surprised with this amount. I was thinking how much benefit I could bring to the constructive and creative society if I spent such money on something else. For example, in Africa, for this amount of money, several families could live for months. But if we abolish taxes and create equal pricing all over the world, this money will be very contributing to everything. During a year, it's already 19,000 euro, which can finance, for example, a water drilling facility. So, if every family saves such a resource and responsible approaches investment of such funds, can we actually have poverty on the planet? And if everyone gives poverty nowadays, if everyone gives away so much money, so-called benefit of the society, but if we start taking active participation in the projects which we should develop as a society, if we actively decide what researches we should perform, then it will be very simple to supply potable water to all corners of the world, to find sources for free energy and electricity, and we will save so much money, which we won't have to spend on some rush, on some troubles and problems. Perhaps this might be called as utopia, but I think it's a reality and it's a necessity if we look into this issue deeply. Thank you very much. Now I give the floor to Anastasia. Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Yes? No? Hello? Guys, can you hear me? In the process of preparation for this game, I've discovered that in most countries of the world, utility companies which supply services to people, they were established at the expense of people's taxes, but now they belong to private companies, not the state. It's a strange story, and I tried to figure out why. It turned out that for example, a country gets a loan and then it has to fulfill several conditions, a number of conditions, has to perform. Turned out that for example, a country gets a loan and then it has to fulfill several conditions, a number of conditions, has to perform privatization and give everything out to private hands. Then the rules of the game is no longer with the state, but it's already financial organizations. I'll call it simply IMF. IMF imposes its rules and controls implementation of these rules. National regulators are being established all over the world so that in all key sectors of the economy, regulators would interfere. These regulators, they are not subordinate to the government. They called sort of independent, but they basically fulfill the will of this extra overnational regulator, and they have unlimited power and unlimited profits from all people all over the world. So they develop and introduce projects about limitation of emissions of CO2, the necessity of immediate distribution of distribution of generation of wind and solar energy. The purpose is to gain unlimited profits. But do we actually want this? We don't. All this is possible only under the conditions of our current consumer society with unlimited capitalization. But if we limit capitalization, limit capitals, all these schemes will no longer be valid. So I urge everyone to join this initiative and to think, what can we do already today in the preparation of our global referendum, which will take place on 9th of May 2020, where we will be able to discuss everything, how we want to live, and do we want to be happy, to be living much better than today, to be developing spiritually, to be in safety, to be surrounded by people who respect and follow the spiritual and moral values. Please join us. Write down your comments and recommendations and suggestions under this video, and let's create this happy, constructive society together.
Leonardo в Аргентину.
It's Leonardo Melino, Argentina. Leonardo, hello.
Леонардо, добрый день, мы слушаем вас.
I live in Buenos Aires, Argentina.
Hi, can you hear me well? Good afternoon. I would like to talk today about how you can create the single and global currency. I believe that this must be done through the single government, which will give the path for humanity, and basically it will allow to distribute all the resources of mankind, to distribute for the benefit of everyone, so that there would be more conscience, more love towards everyone, so that decisions are made in the long-term perspective, so that we would be mature, not just as a society, but as a planet in general, so that we can understand that we are in one place, and this place is called planet Earth. How do we begin this path? Through destructing borders and creating a single currency. In the single society, in the creative society, one currency will provide more equality and more fairness to everyone. Globalization continues, and I would like to express my understanding that this is just a natural process in the development, and not only of consciousness, but also of social, moral, spiritual, and educational development. Economy, just like all things in the universe, is fractal, and the only matter is, how do we find a place for ourselves in this paradigm? How do we make an order? Another advantage is that state services such as gas, electricity, water, and others, renewable or non-renewable energy sources, and such a phenomenon as tax could be the same in the whole world. All these services should be globalized on a fair basis for everyone through a global cooperative. The same thing with the minimum wage or the minimum salary. Also, if it was the same all over the world, it would be the same global salary. It could be done electronically and others. If you take electronically, then we can use a chip in every human being, and physically through chip that that sort of presuppose some sort of loan. Once again, everything is fractal, so everything is important, but at the same time simple, practical, and economical. But at the first, we must change the paradigm of competitiveness of each country. We must remove all borders, privileges, redistribute assets, and limit the wealth of those few who act in the harm of other people. In other way, we must build the creative society. So, with due respect from Argentina, thank you very much. From me, Leonardo Menino.
Thank you, Leonardo. It is interesting to listen that different countries, whether it's Greece, Italy, Germany, they have one common thing according to today's thesis. And that is that utility bills are much more than mentioned 10% from the minimum wage. Let's have a closer look how it is look in Belgium. Olga, Angela, how does it look in Belgium? you have the fountain of a boy, and this fountain consumes a lot of water.
Ako to vyzerá v Belgicku? Vy tam máte predsa fontánu chlapca, ktorý tiež spotrebuje veľa vody.
Yes, and this is the reason why it is so so expensive here. Actually, there are different prices here. So one of them is fixed price, and the other one is cubical meter. So if you take the fixed price, then it is water supply and water purification. The fixed price depends from 120 euro based on the sale of every registered person, and it is clear that the price is higher than these processes, and at the same time he pays 100 euro nevertheless, plus for the water that he doesn't use. Yeah, so the thing is that my grandmother moved to an elderly home, and she was still paying money for the water, even though she wasn't living based on this fixed rate. And actually, in Belgium, people save a lot of resources. I know this from my own experience and also from experience of my friends. People of different social walks of life and status, and when you choose home, you pay attention to how energy efficient the house is, whether it is warm, because we turn on the heating very often. Even when we had a small child, we saved heat. We would light candles because it was less expensive. And in one forum, I even read that one woman had an increased price for gas. And so thing is that she spends a lot of time at work, and during the evening they don't even turn on the light because they are enough in terms of lighting from the outside. At the same time, people save on flushing the toilet. People use just the water that has already been used, or they take baths or showers in sports clubs or in pools. And at the same time, in Ghent, the city of Ghent, we use very expensive purified water. At the same time, you could use rainwater for this, for certain things. And such technologies are used in small cities, in small towns. Regarding economy, I can say the following regarding saving. Had we not been saving, we would pay 2 times more expensive, and we cannot allow this regardless of our wages. I once called my friend to ask her how much she pays for utilities, and she told me, my figures are not representative because I save on everything that I can. I take a shower in a sports club, but although she works as a lawyer and she has an above average salary, yes, that is so. But the thing is not about saving some resources by one and being very spendy and not thrifty by others, because we have a limited amount of resources on the planet. And when you share this information with people, you realize how illusory this price information is. And you pay attention that people sometimes say that, our case is even worse. And consciousness does not even allow the idea that both their and our situations are not allowed. In principle, while getting ready for today's game, I read a lot of information over many years. I read a lot of comments by politicians, and they said they were thinking about what electricity tax to keep and which one to remove, and at the same time they think that it would not affect the prices anyway significantly because another tax would appear. And if you look at the price dynamics, it is changing all the time. It is growing. But this structure is wrong for us people. In principle, things can be different. We can just calculate how much a certain resource costs. We can divide it, and we can calculate how much it pays to connect it to the house, and we can make it transparently. For this, we need no intermediaries that cost a lot of money. And if each of us takes active participation regarding what projects we need, it will be even simpler. And the question is, how can a single resource cost different money in various corners of the world? I think this is wrong. The same price would be great in all the corners of the world, in all the countries. And it is very easy to implement all this. Having the technologies that we already have, having the internet, having all the other electronic gadgets and devices. Alexander, good afternoon to you. Please share with us your situation with Israel. Thank you, Olga. Thank you, Olga, and hello, dear friends. And Israel is a hot country, and it is surrounded by 4 seas. And the matter of drinking water is very acute. The only source of water used to be Kinneret or Galilee Sea lake. It is filled during the rainy season from December to April. With this, the Israeli government, up to 2015, using any excuse, would just raise the water prices. And in central region, the water prices could cost up to 6.75 shekel per 1 cubic meter of water. Since 2016, the country saw water plants that would make the water less salty, and this in some region led to the fact that water price dropped up to 20%. In the center of the country, 5.6 shekel for cubic meter. But since the end of 2018, for no apparent reason, the water prices became more expensive. And now they're 6.05 shekel for 1 cubic meter. So it seems that we have an alternative drinking water source, and the government has accepted the lowering taxes. But why have the prices started to increase again? Of course, if you take the price of water with Europe, Israel has no rivers, and in Europe the water price is much higher. But at the same time, 60% of citizens of Israel rent a flat, and they have no possibility to buy their own apartments, which actually they pay up to 74% of the minimum wage, which makes the situation especially difficult for young people, because most people in Israel live at the expense and credit in loans. Who benefits from such things? Even though the government of Israel always speaks about lowering prices and everything, now let's hear Valery from Belarus. Valery, can you hear us? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Thank you, Alexander. Hello, dear friends. I would like to share with you some conclusions that I made once I studied the matter of causes of why it is difficult for people to access water resources. Based on the expert opinion, 9% of the global community have to buy water from private providers, paying market prices. At the same time, fresh water has been a lucrative business of multicultural corporations for a long time now. So any attempts of countries with dry climate to implement projects that would allow their population to have access to fresh water, this is being fought by the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, and they now promote the ideas of privatization of freshwater sources to benefit certain groups of people. An example, in Egypt, So a number of projects were sabotaged in this matter. And if you take the situation in South Sudan and White Nile, then a canal construction was blocked there. Another example, in Libya, construction in Libya had the most expensive irrigation system, and it allowed to provide cheap fresh water in dry season. So basically, in 2011, the country said no from importing water, which was 11 times more expensive than the water from their own system. So how was this project finalized? By NATO bombarding, which destroyed the already functioning water supply system, and 70% of the population were left without access to water. Social provision and infrastructure of the previously well-off country was destroyed. One of the reasons for this humanitarian catastrophes was that the Libyan irrigational project was just not in the scheme of owning and selling water resources by the ruling elite. But let's imagine and dream. What if people all are sitting at the round table and have a referendum? They would like to limit capitalization of one family down to $10 million. As a result, transnational corporations will remove, and there will be no one left to destroy what people create for their own benefit. All natural resources will belong to all people, and not just declaratively, not just on paper, but like now, but in real life. And any people using modern internet technologies will be able to control, to monitor and regulate their use. This will be so-called public self-governance. The world community will have a lot of free money which will be possible to use to implement such projects in terms of water use, so that water payments were fair and low based on the fixed prices all over the world. Regarding the destroyed water system in Libya, it could be restored and actually improved and built for all countries of Africa. And Africa has a lot of deserts now, but it could become a garden now. This is real. This is already a creative society where fairness is the norm of human activities and societal development. Now I would like to give the floor to Victor from Poltava. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Valera. Truly, fairness is the norm of creative society. Dear friends, what am I hearing today? That all over the world we have problems, but it is high time we solve them, because without water it is just impossible for people to live. I think that we need already now to voice our opinions about what could help us. I believe that fairness and openness in speaking out our thoughts is important. All the methods that are proposed, they must be transparent. So it is important that all the people could participate in them, to monitor this process. Prices for utilities should be fair and should not exceed 10% of wages. All the information regarding price formation of utility payments must be totally transparent and clear. No secrets are possible here. And we actually have a water expert here today, Bogdan. I would like to ask Bogdan this question. Bogdan, what can you tell us in this regard? Thank you, Victor. Truly, the process of providing utility services must be open and transparent for society. And people have the possibility to be active in governing public utilities. But at the same time, I would like to say that there are simple mechanisms regarding decreasing the price and the cost of utility payments. For example, water prices and water waste prices could be decreased by decreasing the components of the cost. For instance, electricity costs can be reduced through energy efficiency things. We can automate certain production and pay less money and have less costs for paying wages. At the same time, if you take water purification, then it could be purified in houses of consumers or up to the choice of consumers. If you take tax benefits, then I can say the following, that you can do so many things in this matter. For example, now I give the floor to Renkiv in Slovakia.
Thank you very much to all of you who talked about water. Water is really the resource of life here on the earth. I would like to move to another topic, which is electricity. We stay in Slovakia and we will ask Joseph, how do you see the production of electricity nowadays? Are you a fan of use of renewable resources, or would you support efforts to look for other options?
Thank you very much for the word. Today in our world is a hot topic, and it's discussed all the time, renewable energy. All experts for more than 30 years in this field claim that the humanity has to start using energy from solar and wind power plants, and that the point of this change will be here very soon. And based on these assumptions, which are supported by the media, grants and subsidies are increasing. As we can see on the graph, for electricity production based on the price per kilowatt, the existing sequential order was as follows: by effectiveness, water, nuclear, gas, coal, wind power, and solar power plants. And we can see that demand for electricity is covered. No customer will purchase such expensive, which is beyond the red line, because it is ineffective and it is very costly. In the following graph, we can see what happened when EU authorized subsidies for wind power and solar plants, artificially reducing the costs. Gas and coal power plants are shifted beyond the red line. When there is no sun or wind, backup energy is needed to cover this outage of gap. But this means that it has to be paid by people. And that's why the cost has risen by 200 to 250 euros per household per year. Hypothetically, let us imagine that the price for energy is zero. You don't need to pay for it. You don't need to buy this energy. Nobody will threaten us that he will raise the price of this energy. More than 100 years ago, the entire scientific community talked about the ether. Ether is an inexhaustible resource of energy. The ether energy can be obtained anywhere in the world and beyond. It is only important to learn how to manage it. And maybe with just a small grant, skilled scientists would find out how to create such power plants, making them a reality. Many scientists have already achieved positive results. But Nikola Tesla achieved practical results himself and drove a car powered by ether energy. Tell me, who wouldn't like to live in such a society? It is only up to us how we will decide, and no one else can make this choice for us. We can only decide for ourselves if we wish to live in a creative and constructive society. Nastya, what do you think?
Thank you very much, Joseph. I would like just a little bit to add and explain what Joseph has said about the schedule. You know, the just peculiarity of electricity is that the balance should be maintained at any given moment and time. As the consumption just is changing all the time, so the power plants should just maintain the stability of that. So in such a case, or otherwise we might have some just problems. So this is the balance should be in the energy system. So let's study how the power plants, or which kind of plants can ensure that. Atom energy plants cannot just ensure that because it is dangerous. Another kind of hybrid plants, they are not. There are not enough of them. And the next most usable so-called just power plants are the so-called heat power plants or thermal power plants. And of course, the cost of this energy is twice as much as just in comparison with the other kinds of energy. And you know, coal plants are very big, and you know, these coal plants produce lots of hydro gas. And you know, we even got okay, we've got an idea just to develop the solar energy production. And but that said that the solar energy production costs a lot. So what's happening with all these plants? These plants depend a lot on just the weather. So what do they compensate by? And with the green energy plants, of course, other plants are grown which just pollute the environment. And of course, you know, the producers, they just, what are they interested in getting the profit? And all this dirty business, so-called, is imposed on people to a great extent. And though the solar energy isn't produced or isn't being produced that much, but you know, people are all the same. They pay taxes. So actually, people don't know that exactly they pay for the solar energy. So for just to be more exact, I would like to give the word to Angela in Belgium. She would like to share her experience. Thank you, Anastasia, very much. Right, we've just touched upon the green energy. So I would like to give you an example that in 2006, the government in Belgium, they began to actually promote the production of green energy. So it turned out that nearly everybody just installed those solar panels on their roofs. And you know what was the scandal about? That one of the wealthy people in Belgium, a billionaire, he also installed solar panels in his company, and he received his profit. So you know, 84 million euros his company just got in subsidies, or due to subsidies, and actually the government, you know, got the debt, because actually all the sum of this debt just, and this debt was so-called distributed among ordinary people, and of course people just started being indignant, as this tax on solar energy, it wasn't, you know, just cancelled, but it was just so-called renamed by other law. And So I've read that about the report of the State Service on Energy Resources, and the very just cost of electricity is just 30% of the bill, and also another 30% is federal tax and just VAT. But all the other percent is just what people pay. So the so-called tax on green energy is paid by people. So if anybody just got a special roof with solar panels, other people have to pay for that. And last year, the Belgian government, collected just more than €1.5 billion from these so-called hidden fees. So actually, the prices for electricity, they are rising just because of these hidden numbers and taxes. So, of course, according to the Constitution, resources should belong to people, and people should pay only for the costs of just obtaining these resources. But in the creative society, it would be possible for people just not to pay those hidden taxes. But how is it how is it going on in Germany? Thank you very much, Angela. Good afternoon, everybody. So, just while getting ready for this today's meeting, I've tried to just find out what's behind all these numbers of these taxes. So I suggest to you to study the payment, the utility payments. So what does it include? Can you show us the graph, please? Just a little bit waiting. The graphic is going to be shown on your screens. A little bit patience. Thank you very much. So here you can see that about 60% of taxes in Germany, just electricity should be paid by VAT, and also the tax, so-called ecological tax, the standard tariff, and €130. But it doesn't depend on people's consumption. This tax is done by the provider. So it includes even the text of on different equipment or just service. Since 2014, we see unsanctioned costs by other electric energy plants. So you see that this payment also includes building of these power plants, and this building has actually even started. But people have to pay already. 23% of tax just goes on transportation and also just the usage of equipment, and only 15% is just the payable price. Thank you very much for the graph. In Germany, there are thousands of power users, power providers, and of course, each of these providers sets his just tariffs, his own tariffs, and these tariffs are increasing constantly. Even even if you don't waste this energy or this electricity, you will have to pay for it anyway. I believe that people should or don't have to pay taxes, and and I believe that if each of us knew what he pays for, where this money goes to, then we wouldn't agree with such such situation. In the creative society, everything should be open, sincere. Hello.
Thank you, Elena. It's really very interesting information to think about. Looking at the graph, it reminded me how the energy prices were going up in Slovakia because of the distribution company's privatization. At first, it was presented to us as something positive, that the services will be better. But if I look at it later, we delegated the power to people. It became a real business for certain companies which create monopolies. It means that we can decide for whoever supplier, we will pay the lot of money anyway. This is directly related to the indefinite capitalization of the individual, as well as with the giving power to representatives who make decisions on our behalf. Let's imagine how the conditions could change during the society transformation from the consumer society to a spiritual creative society, as it's mentioned in the last pages of AllatRa book. If we return to our example about distribution companies, and after induction of a family capitalization of 10 million American dollars, shareholders' efforts to maximize profit will no longer exist. This money could be used for a free education, for example, for better healthcare, and so on. And the next thing in the creative society, which should not be happening, is not delegating the power to someone else. By delegating others, we move our own responsibilities to others to accuse them later. It is clearly written in all the constitutions of all nations that power comes from the people. Those who have been delegated, they cease to defend the interests of those who delegated it to them and begin to defend their personal interests. And later, I won't need to be worried that I don't have the money to pay bills today, tomorrow. In such a creative society, we can use energy resources in much better way. Even as it is described in a book called Original Physics of AllatRa. I would like to pass the word to Ole and Jen.
Thank you, Marek. And really, the prices in Europe on electricity just are increasing. So, 189 billion dollars have been spent last year, and the prices are still increasing. So the big plants and the energy producers or just they have also to pay for the so-called after effects. So if they just consume more, they have, but they have to pay more, as the government just doesn't have all these emissions. The producers should be just sold by the producers themselves, and it's not a secret that the price actually the end users have to pay for all those emissions. But in fact, we know that dioxide gas, okay, it doesn't exist, in fact, doesn't influence that much. And but why are people imposed this that they are responsible for all those gas emissions? People shouldn't pay for any other, gas emissions. And if we make the redistribution of finance just clear and possible to be controlled by people themselves, and even if we have any kind of problem, so all the humankind just could get together and solve this problem. So it's not a problem if we pay more for something, but if we get together and make such a decision and just redistribute all those extra expenses, then it would be fine, really fine for everyone. Galina, how is it going on with the electricity in Kyrgyzstan? Thank you very much, Oля. And just listening to your speeches, I've understood that in each country they are just increase on electricity taxes is the same. So, we pay just out of our pocket for all those false theories. The point of just electricity increase is really also very actual in our country. So in Kyrgyzstan, just electricity production is very. And today we have the lowest actually tariffs for electricity all over the world. We have just it coincides, or it has to correlate with the minimal wages. So an average family pays about
Постоянно убеждает в том, что цены на свет нужно повышать, и основной довод – это то, что тариф не покрывает себестоимость электричества, то, что очень много коммерческих потерь, что ресурсы, сети изношены. Но по закону, согласно специальной методике расчета, себестоимость электричества уже закладывается, и расходы на ремонт сети, на коммерческие потери, тогда возникает единственный резонный вопрос, куда и на что уходят наши деньги. А вот одной из реальных правдивых причин повышения цен на свет является все та же непобедимая коррупция. Согласно опросу общественного мнения, энергетическая отрасль, она вообще является одной из самых коррумпированных отраслей экономики. И от этой коррупции сложно будет избавиться до тех пор, пока те заинтересованы в доступе к энергоресурсам. Была открыта для общества. И любой человек имеет право в онлайн-режиме проконтролировать получено прибыли той или иной энергокомпании, на что она потрачена, на какие социальные проекты и программы ушло финансирование этой прибыли. Ограничение капитализации пресечет любые попытки монополизировать энергоотрасли, водоснабжающие и другие народные ресурсы. Мы забудем, наконец-то, о отключениях света, воды для того, чтобы создать искусственный дефицит с целью повышения цен. И благодаря отлично развитой системе общественного самоуправления и контроля, которую мы обязательно разовьем в созидательном обществе, мы наконец-то побудим наших чиновников ответственно, добросовестно к исполнению своих обязанностей. Самое главное, у нас все же для этого есть. У нас есть право на управление делами государства, право на информацию. И самое главное, право на... Я уверена, что мы вполне можем построить созидательное общество, и при условии, что каждый из нас серьезно займется своим духовным развитием. И сделает первый и очень важный шаг, когда 9 мая 2020 года придет на общемировой референдум и проголосует за лучшую судьбу и за лучшую жизнь, на которую мы все имеем право. Спасибо.
Galina, ďakujem za tvoje postrehy. Tieto informácie sú naozaj nelichotivé. Poďme sa ďalej pozrieť na plyn. Čo nás pri ňom čaká, čo sa nám podarilo zistiť. Olga, opäť dávam slovo do Belgicka.
Спасибо, Роберт. Спасибо, Роберт. Разузнать удалось много, хотя в целом картина, конечно, не сильно отличается от ситуации по электричеству. И хотя сам ресурс стоит немного меньше, чем электричество, но ценообразование в целом абсолютно абсурдно. 65% от конечной стоимости для потребителей составляют налоги. На счетчиках мы видим количество в метрах кубических, хотя счет на оплату приходит в киловаттах-часах, что сильно усложняет для потребителя процесс контроля оплачиваемых данных. И вообще возникает вопрос, почему же на государственном уровне не стимулируется массовое внедрение более дешевых методов отопления жилья? Ведь существует уже небольшой опыт применения в той же Бельгии, ведутся исследования об отоплении жилья с помощью тепловых сетей, которые используют либо остаточное тепло от больших заводов, либо с помощью геотермальной энергии, то есть непосредственно с глубинных недр. А ядро Земли является неисчерпаемым источником энергии. И в Копенгагене, например, уже 98% домов отапливаются с помощью вот таких вот тепловых сетей, а в Дании, в общем, это уже 60%. И половина таких вот тепловых сетей используют именно остаточное тепло от мусоросжигательных заводов. То есть это и есть практически пример того, что даже при нынешнем уровне развития технологий мы можем использовать более дешевые методы для отопления жилья. Друзья, зрители-профессионалы, а что думаете вы по этому поводу? Какие еще альтернативы для отопления можем мы применять в созидательном обществе? Пишите свои комментарии под видео, а я передаю слово Любомиру в Чехии.
Děkuji ti, Olgo, a pojďme ke statistice. V případě, že budu pobírat průměrnou mzdu ve druhém kvartálu letošního roku činila 34 105 korun, tak po zaplacení všech životních nákladů mi zbyde tak 20%. Proč tak málo? Poprosím režii o obrázek. Tak třeba cena elektrické energie za 28 let vzrostla o 985% a cena plynu o 1060%. Na makroekonomické úrovni nejvyššími manipulanty s cenami jsou Mezinárodní asociace provozovatelů evropských soustav ENCOE a Acer a využívají k tomu kodexy, jež jsou zaváděny do legislativy EU. Učebnicovým příkladem budiž prodej ničeho. Projekt vznikl v Kyoto roku 2005. Prodejem emisních povolenek vydělali za 4 roky 2,5 násobek. Děkuji režii za obrázek. Proč ale stále používáme 100 let staré technologie a proč nejsou k dispozici nové? Režie nepotřebuje obrázek. V 19. století byl ze všech zdrojů záměrně odstraňován koncept nehmotného světa, který existuje mimo prostor a čas. Již i Nikola Tesla přišel s využitím volné energie a kaša, a to se prostě nehodilo do krámu. Tím, že všechna následující pokolení byla vychovávána v tak upravených podmínkách, tak následně došlo jen k rozvoji materiální úrovně, tedy jen ke konzumnímu způsobu života. A to se projevilo i ve vědě, kdy například kvantová fyzika již dnes nemá odpovědi na jevy, či je nedokáže vyjádřit současnými definicemi. Pokusím režii o druhý obrázek. Tedy většina z nás do rukou jen určité hračky a ty ostatní nám byly záměrně odebrány. V tvořivé společnosti budou využívány vědecko-technické poznatky pro ulehčení a zjednodušení života všech lidí. Představte si, že je zdarma k dispozici elektrická energie o napětí 300 až 500 tisíc V, jež je k dispozici mezi Zemí a ionosférou. Tedy zákonitě budou nízké a stabilní ceny energií a potravin. A maximální daňové odvody budou do výše 10% z minimální mzdy. Děkuji režii za obrázek. Sami lidé prostřednictvím elektronických referend či online mezinárodních konferencí, například tak jako dnes, nebo na mezinárodní konferenci, totiž cílem tvořivé společnosti je, aby každý člověk žil a byl šťastný, svobodný a aby ostatní životní podmínky tomu odpovídaly. Děkuji a předávám slovo Rence zpět do Bratislavy.
I would like to cover this topic with education.
Za oblast vzdelávania povedať svoje postrehy. Začala by som otázkou. Prečo u nás existujú pôžičky na vzdelávanie?
And I would like to cover this topic with education, education, and I will start with a question. Why do we have a study and interest-free loans if I live in a country in which the constitution guarantees free education? If people need to take a study loan, they quickly learn that these loans are not social in nature. They are simply market-based. The interest rate can be as high as 6%. In practice, I find out very frequently that education spending is a burden for all families, but first and foremost for families with social disadvantages. Where I work, pupils come to me and they say they have really difficulties to pay for the books. After the lesson, pupils usually come to me and they go to work after school, but they still haven't received the salary. Very often these students do work at the cash points in different fast food companies. So they could pay for their expenses in school. For example, the kids who work 40 kilometers away from home on the boarding school, it's very expensive for them to Sometimes there's only a single parent who earns money, and it's really high amount of money which they can afford. They can't afford it. I'm asking, is it a real help and a decent life? Personally, I would really like if our consumer society would become the creative one, and my students wouldn't have to go to work after school, and easily they could have free time to spend to study. And also that the education wouldn't be focused for market spending, and that the families could earn enough money so can support their kids. I personally think that we should cap the capitalization, and that there should be free education, and social loans should be free of interest. Allah, in Italy, do you hear me?
Thank you very much, Michaela. The availability of credit provision in Italy leaves much to be desired. Let me give you an example of my friend. She was a bank client for 15 years, and recently she wanted to start her own business, and she was lacking 6,000 euro. It's not big money, but the bank refused her. So it turns out that for all these years, the bank account received her wages, salaries. The person was paying for bank services and basically was paying for using her own money. But when the person needed financial assistance, the bank refused. And she had to go to a finance company where the credit loan rate, where the interest rate was much, much higher. And, there are many such cases. It relates not only to small loans, but also housing credits. A finance company requires a lot of documents from people, including unlimited employment contract, which is very difficult to get because the employer benefits from short-term contracts instead of long-term contracts. As a result, it is very difficult to fulfill all the provisions of the bank. So that is why most Italian families rent housing, and it happens for years. People work, people spend their efforts, but people cannot be certain in tomorrow. And I believe in a constructive society, no such tax rates should be present in housing, regarding education. There shouldn't be inflation, there shouldn't be increase in interest rates on loans. As a result, we will have no homeless people. Suicides will stop based on the fact that the person simply is unable to make payments on the loan and get rid of this financial trap, because modern economy in consumer society is aimed at increasing the money of elite who rule the modern economy and takes no care of us whatsoever. Creative society, on the other hand, will serve humanity and every person. This will be beneficial for everyone, and every person in the creative society will have time for their spiritual development, for family, for the hobby and work in that area where he will be able to develop their full potential. And people will live calmly without worries and anxiety about tomorrow. Thank you very much. I would like to give the floor to Slovakia, to Barbara.
Thank you. Hello to everyone. I would like to say a few words about social loans for disabled families. In Slovakia, Such loans with a 1% interest are provided by the State Housing Development Fund. Maximum loan value is 80,000 euros and lend to pay it off is 4 years. It is extremely difficult to get this type of a loan. The applicant must meet the financial criteria to borrow and prove the ability to repay it. If the criteria are not met, then the applicant needs to use normal bank loan. If the conditions are met, the administration process of obtaining other documents begins. This discourages many people because it takes half a year to approve a loan and no seller is willing to wait so long. People solve this matter that they buy a property from their own family. Therefore, the need to buy an own apartment has not been accomplished, and the idea of helping people in need is not being met. However, it could also be resolved differently by helping and setting the rules of functional, creative, and constructive society, where human life comes first. If a person becomes disabled during life or a child is born in this way, both end up in a medical facility first. Free high-quality medical and psychological assistance is provided in these facilities. At the same time, the employee contacts another relevant administrations throughout the process. If there is a need for a barrier, free housing then helps. The help is provided easily without interest on loans, without providing health status documentation, income, ADC. These situations are electronically recorded and therefore it is simple communicated and provide necessary documents between various authorities. Personal contact can also prevent possible system abuse by the people themselves. My friends, let's create a society based on a real human values, where robbing each other doesn't exist, where complicated processes are simplified, where all people are healthy, spiritually and physically. And the topic, which I've just covered, becomes irrelevant. Everything is possible when there is real love and good in us. Thank you very much for your attention, and I would like to welcome Tatiana from Belarus. Please share with us which kind of social loans is available in your country, and how do you see creative and constructive society?
Yes, Barborka. Hello. Actually, the housing issue is very, very pressing. So let's consider an example in when a young person begins their lives. Quite often he begins in debt. But let's take the city where I live. If you take the wages of a young specialist and the cost of a small one-room apartment that does not cost expensive, it is unreal to buy it on your own. For that, you need to not eat or drink for 7 years. So what's the option? The option is to rent it, but the thing is that it is very difficult to rent it for cheap because it's the half price of wages and the other half will go for food. So the option is loan. But at the same time, the interest rate on this loan will amount to the entire salary of the young specialist. So it turns out that the person is an adult, but he's not independent. He's dependent on many circumstances. So we have the government that helps people. It provides support to the young family and some subsidies for the utilities, but the world economy is such that it is very difficult to just take money in a sufficient amount to help the young specialists. But what prevents us to organize a life for this young specialist? How is that we, the children of one God, live in such different conditions? Some bathe in luxury, while for most people it is difficult to make 2 ends meet. But we can change the situation. We can vote to limit capitalization and nullify all the public debt of all countries. If people take such a decision, then we have a lot of money on hand. It is this money that will be the source to increase salaries and wages of people, and for all sorts of social loans. In other words, interest-free loans. It is obligatory for all the payments for all the percent of wages and salaries are no more than 10% of utility. So utilities are not more than 10% of salaries. It is a real thing to do. You can do it because creative society will have no small wages. The wages will be just high or middle sized. Also, the housing will be less expensive because when we fix prices on energy, the construction material and construction works will also be less expensive. And it is very simple to organize the process to prevent different fraud. We can use blockchain when the records of all the transactions are served on many computers regardless of the user. Thus, the entry cannot be modified or deleted. You can just add something, add another entry. A lot of things have been thought of and it acts efficiently, but if something is missing, we can come up with something new. If you have some other creative ideas, please leave comments below the video or send your thoughts to AllatRa TV website. Thank you.
Tatiana, for this important information, as I do have sons who will grow up one day, they will direct face this issue. I can imagine what a relief this would be for young people. Natalia, greetings to Kiev. Could you tell us how do you picture creative society as we talked about a lot today?
Ďalej dávame slovo do Kieva Natálii. Natália, vieš nám prosím ťa povedať, ako si ty predstavuješ tvorivú spoločnosť, o ktorej sa dnes toľko hovorí?
Thank you, Robert. Dear friends, today we hear that utility payments and social loans in the format of consumer society are a powerful tool of manipulation because they touch upon the basic needs of people. We've also discussed with you today that creative society should have utilities not more than 10% of salaries. They should amount to no more than 10%. And I believe that each of us may ask ourselves, is it possible? How real is that? And my answer, that it is impossible if you take consumer society. But if you take constructive creative society, then it is yes. And it's a big yes, capitalized yes, exclamation mark yes. And participants have already discussed how and why it is possible. Thing is that knowledge of the AllatRa primordial physics opens the source to endless energy that is everywhere. You don't need to store it, you don't need to transmit it over distance. It is available to every person in every point of space and time, and it changes the person's life at a high quality level. So nuclear power plants disappear, oil, gas, solar and wind power become irrelevant. And what does it mean? That if you take our utilities, we have to pay no money for electricity, for gas, and for other energy sources that are related to utility payments. And it means that in creative society, we are free from the obligation to work so hard just to pay utilities. In the creative society, we live for the purpose of knowing ourselves and the world. And now I would like to give the floor to Michaela in Slovenia.
Natalia, thank you for your inspiration. For a long time, I was convinced that building a creative and constructive society is none of my business. There should be someone else who will do it. But it is the opposite. It involves every one of us because we all allow this to happen. Together we can do a lot. We can create the creative society we all desire. I definitely want to live like this, but the first step is needed to be taken, is to join the worldwide online conference on the 9th of May 2020. There we can show that we are ready to change the format of the society from consumer to creative. And we understand that nature resources belong to the state, but state is formed of us, we form the state, so we can decide. We can give up a lot of what we have to pay. When we roll up our sleeves and start cooperate together, we will find out that we don't need many of the services, and by realizing this, we already lower the expenses. We don't need to wait until someone else shows the snow from our doorstep. We can grab shovels ourselves, clean up flats, collect garbage from our forests, and help those who are truly in need. Okay, some technical difficulties. I feel that I can really help and change the creative to, I can change and subscribe to the creative society. I pass the word to Kiev now.
Thank you, Mihaela. We have guests in our studio today. Anatoly Skorokhod, head of the NGO European Vector of Development. We know that you also dream of creative society. You have such a dream, you have ideas about this and practical thoughts about how we can move in this direction, how do we solve matters. Please share with us. Thank you very much for your interesting discussion. It was very interesting for me to know that the paid lawyer in Belgium also saves money just on electricity, on heating, just like our poor pensioners. And we would very much like our citizens' level of life to be the same as in the rest of Europe, but there is a big way ahead for us. But what is the algorithm of our activities that we have already begun? What does this discussion mean? Or what does this discussion cycle mean? It means that all the people present in this discussion space, we have determined that we wish for this new creative society. We are already moving in this direction. And the algorithm seems quite simple and efficient. Well, we have already started this path. We started with ourselves, with our relatives. We have realized that we must change our consciousness, change our attitude towards reality, become more socially aware citizens, and find like-minded people, not only like-minded people in the city, around us, in our country, but today we're having the discussion among different countries and even continents. Today we are finding out about problems that are the same, and the question arises, what can we do? Actually, we can achieve a lot. Interestingly, this interesting part has many components. The first one is that we can be passive, first of all, participants. What I mean by passive is that we can exchange the energy-consuming light bulbs for more modern devices such as LED lamps. And they save energy more than 5 times. And we see that electricity is everywhere, and electricity is present in large amounts. Also, it is the most corruption component, and it is the most taxed component. So if you decrease your energy consumption, if you make your energy efficiency higher, energy efficiency of your house, this is step 1. Next, we must remember that if you take a democratic country, then every president is elected based on the vote of people. Every member of parliament in Belgium, in Ukraine, in Argentina, in Russia, every member of parliament becomes a member only when you vote for him or her. But why are we saying or thinking about politicians only when we need to make choices? Already today we need to choose and elect the politicians that would stand for our rights. I have heard interesting piece of information that there is a US presidential candidate who is our like-minded person and who is aware of the necessity of some serious change. And this is a very good vector of development. We understand that there are people who have become aware of this. And we know that people will not have to wait. And we must not wait when political parties come to us with their propaganda slogans. We must come to them and say that we want you to accept our position and we will support you. And then when they come to power, we must continue with our pressure. And in many countries, politicians represent not the people, but oligarchs. So our task is to bring such politicians into power who will speak for our interests. And this is step number one, but of course it's a lengthy process. It's a more challenging process. But I believe, while listening to this discussion, this has already been mentioned. I said nothing new, and I believe that all of us together will be able to make our world better. Thank you very much. We have another guest, Dr. Mossad Evis from Cairo. Could you please share, Dr. Mossad, what you think about the topics that have been raised today and how things are in Egypt? I would like to thank so much for this opportunity to speak today. I've always been optimistic, and my colleagues who have spoken before me made me even more optimistic. If there are such people and directors in the world, I believe that very soon the world will change for the better. We want no war. And you know, any war is terrible. We have different kinds of wars right now. War against hunger, against poverty, against migrants. And if I speak about my country, then accidentally, well, I was born in Egypt by accident, actually. It's not my pain, it's just a fact. I could have been born in any country. But what I'm trying to say is that let's use AllatRa through this pyramid science to find some sort of program so that we could quickly achieve this, so that people could live in a good atmosphere, good environment. Why are some people poor while others are rich? Why? If people are rich, where does this wealth come from? And why is everyone else poor? So everyone wants to have a worthy life. So please, if you're a rich person, please help others become wealthy. If the poor become the rich, then everyone will live peacefully. Everyone will live in peace. And people will not do bad things against you. So I believe that, conscience. Conscience is something that everyone has. All people have conscience. People who live on this planet. I'm not speaking about Africa, about black or... I believe that through AllatRa, through the pyramid science, I would like to see every person in the world hunger-free. It would be nice if people were healthy. if people had time to rest, had enough time. So I visited Ukraine, I visited Russia, and I was writing my thesis on working with youth. So let's work on youth. Let's work with youth. But the thing is that before becoming youth, these people were children, but directors do not want to work with children. They want to, work with adults. But thing is that when children grow up, they take an example from their parents, from their professors, from their teachers. And if we speak about sport, all people are sport fans, but I become very sad when sport is used at the professional level for some bad things. So let's use AllatRa and the pyramid science to make a competition, a sports competition for children, for the disabled, for adults, so that people could go in for sports for health and not for competition, for having good disposition. If you agree, I would be very, very grateful to you. Thank you. We know that today we have your colleague from Egypt, Mohammed.
Спасибо. Мы знаем, что с нами сейчас на связи ваш коллега из Египта, Мухаммед.
Okay, welcome. Thank you for my participation in that great conference. When I told about the conference and the topic of economic, I chose to speak about important topic. It's about rationalization of consumption and how is it related to Islamic and Arabic culture, the heritage of Islamic and Arabic culture. So moderation is the essence of Islam in all human activities, and that culture forbid impoverishment as stated in the verse of Quran, and whoever is staying but doesn't abstain from himself. And the words of the Prophet Muhammad also ensure that meaning, as he said, don't be stingy. Scrooge is an enemy of all of himself and the enemy of his around world, because he prevent people to get benefit, even if it reached the case of asceticism and depriving himself of necessary things, as our religion has forbidden us from wasteful and wasteful consumption too. The ultimately said, the question is said, and don't waste that he doesn't like the extravagant, and wasting more than extra vegans. It's an exaggeration, the exceeding the known limit, and the expansion of spending prohibited and disobedience to sin. So the luxury is more than extra vegans, as one expands luxury in the century of the world and its desires. So we has also station that prevent that or يعني tell us to take care from that, because Prophet Muhammad also say it is evil of seek the colors of food and the colors of garment. Uh, put put rules for luxury behavior because that prevent destruction of nations and help to build our world. Okay. Um, so of this sense from the right path and a sign of fragmentation of the entity of society and the and that stingy lead to fragmentation and lead to يعني, destroying our nations. Okay, the rules that governing the consumer process, including forbidding waste of the resources of the individual and the society, and the order of moderation in spending. So that the Muslim is balanced or should be between the interests of religion and the world and the spirit and the matter. Forbidding luxury and wastefulness and wastefulness doesn't mean calling for stagnancy or scarcity or despair. Luxury and wastefulness lead to wasting resources and destroying them, both of which are a scourge. Both of them are harmful. So we invite to make balance between. Okay? And also warned people to enter its spending, flaunting, or this disillusionment. Okay. Um, also, I want to talk about that culture or that our culture called for economic education through good production and the earning, good consumption and spending and the good distribution. In this regard, we can ask what was the messenger, prophet or messengers, all relations and all wisdom carrier uh, when they talk about and they educate their students uh, about education, that the richness of the riches of the soul as started in as we started يعني as we talked with alignment with AllatRa concepts and AllatRa ideas. So is this we are starting from educating how we connected with the soul, how we deal with that soul, with uh, that source of energy. Also, education on work and in childhood, it should be considered because that it's very important. Um, so we also want to assure that we all need to regain our culture and regain our dealing with our soul and how to deal with that resources of like water and like all our renewable energy from the sun, from the soil, from ourselves how we deal with that sources of energy, of power, and as we deal with our soul, because we are all connected. Our soul is connected with the soil, with the water, even in the treasures under the ground, like gold, like each and etc. So how we deal with that in balance, not be deal with fullness, or deal as a stingy, not give more than we should, hold more than we should. We need to make a balance between them, and that what I want to share with you. And thanks again to be sharing with you that ideas in AllatRa conference. And thanks again.
Ďakujeme za tieto
Спасибо,
informácie.
Мухаммед. Да, справедливое общество, в основе которого дух.
Vladislav, please share your view of a creative society. How do you see it? We can hear you. Hello. So I've been listening today to the speakers, and I feel, and I guess we all feel that to organize our earthly existence here just as peaceful and effective. Of course, it would be good to create such a creative society where each person would be responsible and for his actions, and wouldn't shift his responsibility onto others. And even if a person just becomes a president, he's very decent, or the most decent one, the fairest. But anyway, there would be people who would support him, or who would reprimand him. So I believe that we should unite and be responsible, and also in our hands. Just it's up to us to build such a society in which free people would live. And as Igor Mikhailovich Danilov says, a healthy person is the one who has the angel in his heart. So let's all strive for it, and let's meet together on the 9th of May in 2020. Thank you very much.
Dear listeners and participants of today's day, as seen in today's discussion, change of consumer society to create a constructive one does not need to be just hypothetical. On the contrary, it is very simple. It is enough to make a choice as a human. After all, everything else is in its place. And the only thing which prevents us is our consciousness, which is constantly trying to control our lives. Let's step over it, and let's all of us begin to form a society where prevail love, friendship, mutual help, and spiritual values among the people. Every person wants to live in such a society after all. Imagine working 4 to 5 hours a day, having a job that you don't need to survive, but a job that you love and that you like. And the rest of the time spending with your relatives and developing yourself to become a human.
Thank you, Robert. Our conference is coming to its end. I am very grateful that we spent so much time with this topic today, that we stopped, that we discussed openly how should the new creative society be, It's actually not the new society. To be precise, just to recreate the format of the Great Society that already existed 6,000 years ago. Then the real thing was to understand who I am and what is the purpose of life. Yes, we are dual. We do believe that the light within us is stronger and more powerful, and therefore I would like to welcome you to the worldwide online conference next year. And before we depart today, we would like to invite you to another game of professionals, which will be hosted by Atlanta in USA. It's gonna be on the 2nd of November at 10 a.m. local time. The theme will be healthcare in the creative society. Thank you very much to all of you from all the 140 countries, all translators. Have a wonderful weekend, everyone.